Welcome back. Now we've just added 3 variables to our weapon data table, and those are the automatic fire rate, the muzzle flash, and the fire sound. Now we need to make sure we're referencing the data that we set from these in C++. So in the weapon class, weapon.cpp, and on construction, you'll see that we have variables on the weapon class called auto fire rate, muzzle flash, and fire sound, and we're setting those from the weapon data table. We need to get these and use them when firing the weapon in our shooter character's weapon fire code. Now, in order to be able to do that, we need public getters for these. So let's go ahead and create those in weapon.h. So in weapon.h, in the public section, we're going to create some force inline getters. Now the first is going to return a float, and it's going to be called get auto fire rate. It's going to be const, and it's going to return auto fire rate. Now next is our muzzle flash, which is a U particle system. So we're going to add a getter for that. This will also be force inline, and it's going to be U particle system, and it's going to be called get muzzle flash. This will be const as well, and this will return muzzle flash. And finally, we'll need a public getter for fire sound, which is a use sound cue. So we're going to add another force inline, use sound cue pointer, and this will be get fire sound. It's const, and it will return fire sound. So now that we have public getters, we can use these in our weapon fire code. Let's start with the auto fire rate. Now in shooterCharacter.cpp, we fire the weapon and then we start the fire timer, and we can't fire the weapon again until auto fire reset gets called, and that gets called at the end of this amount of time automatic fire rate. Now instead of automatic fire rate, we're now going to get the variable from the weapon class that we called auto fire rate. So there's no sense in starting the fire timer if we don't have an equipped weapon. So we're going to first check to see if equipped weapon is valid, and if it's not, in other words, if it's null pointer, then we're just going to return. So instead of automatic fire rate, we can use equipped weapon and use the getter for get auto fire rate and use that instead. And now we don't need that automatic fire rate variable in shooterCharacter.cpp. So let's go ahead and take it out. So we're going to search for automatic fire rate, and we're going to delete it here, and we're going to delete it from the constructor as well. So let's go up to shooter characters automatic fire rate initialization here, and let's go ahead and delete that. And before I do, I'm going to copy it so I can search to see if it's used anywhere else. And it's not, because we get the red rectangle here. So that was the only place that we used it. So that's the automatic fire rate. Now next we have the muzzle flash. Now muzzle flash is used when we're firing the weapon, and if we go to shooterCharacter.cpp and look for fire weapon, then we can take a look at some of the functions we're calling here. Now, play fire sound doesn't sound like where we would put our particle system spawning. Play gunfire montage sounds like it's just taking care of the montage. What about send bullet? Let's take a look at what we did there. So here's send bullet, and here in send bullet, sure enough, we're checking if we have muzzle flash, and we're spawning the emitter here. So we can actually use the muzzle flash from our equipped weapon instead. So we're going to first check to see if that's valid. So we're going to say if equipped weapon get muzzle flash, and if that is valid, we'll spawn the emitter and use that instead. We'll use equipped weapon get muzzle flash. And now I want to search for muzzle flash to see if we're using muzzle flash anywhere else. And those are the only 2 places we're using it. So we can go ahead and remove that variable from shooterCharacter.h as well. So let's search for muzzle flash. And we'll take this out of shooterCharacter.h. Now lastly, we have fire sound. So let's take a look at where we play the fire sound in our code here. So we're going to go back to fire weapon. And here we have play fire sound. Let's go to that function. And here we're checking to see if we have fire sound. And if so, we're playing the fire sound. Here instead, we can check if equipped weapon get fire sound is valid. And then we can simply use that here when playing the sound. Now we're not checking to see if equipped weapon is valid because we're calling this in our fire weapon function, and we check to see if it's valid here first. So we'll never play fire sound or send bullet if equipped weapon is null. Now we're using get fire sound from the equipped weapon. Let's see if we use fire sound anywhere else. And we're not. So we can take that out of shooterCharacter.h as well. So let's go ahead and remove fire sound from shooterCharacter. So now we're actually using those variables that we set in the data table. Let's compile this and see how this works in our game. And I'm getting a compiler error because in get auto fire rate, I just typed auto fire rate instead of return auto fire rate. So I'm getting ahead of myself there. I'm going to go ahead and fix that and compile. All right, so we're all compiled. Let's go back into the editor and see how this works. I'm going to click on this assault rifle and move it just to trigger its on construction script and hit play, pick up this weapon, and let's see how things look. So there's our weapon firing for the SMG, and it's going pretty fast. Now let's switch over to our assault rifle, and it's firing a lot slower, and it's also using a different sound. Now we're using the same muzzle flash, but we could easily just change that in the data table, and we'd see a different muzzle flash here when firing the assault rifle. Okay, excellent. So we're now gaining more variety among our different weapon types and making it extremely easy to change these properties because we have a data table that serves as the authoritative source of data for each weapon. So that's going to conclude this video. We've now set up our weapons and things are looking pretty good. Okay, that's going to go ahead and conclude this video. We'll see you in the next one.